They thought the signal was just static from deep beneath the Antarctic ice. But when they traced it, they found a facility that should have never existed. And it was still running. The storm came without warning. Wind howled across the white expanse, cutting visibility down to nothing. The research outpost, Station Thule 9, was barely a cluster of metal structures half buried in snow, its antennas rattling violently in the wind. Inside, 5 scientists huddled around a monitor that pulsed with a faint, rhythmic signal, a sound that didn't belong to any natural source. Dr. Elias Ward, the team lead, leaned closer to the flickering screen. "It's not seismic," he muttered, adjusting the dials. "The frequency's too consistent. It's mechanical." Dr. Naomi Rivas, the communication specialist, frowned. "But it's coming from below us. At least 10 kilometers down." "That's impossible," said Mark Jensen, the geologist. "There's nothing down there but ice, rock, and—" He stopped when the signal spiked. A sharp tone echoed through the lab speakers, rising in pitch like a scream buried under static. Then it cut out, leaving only the soft hum of the generator. Elias straightened, his face pale. "Run a triangulation. I want to know exactly where that came from." It took hours through the storm, but by midnight, Naomi had the coordinates. They pointed to a flat, featureless section of ice about 20 kilometers east of the outpost, a place no one had ever mapped before. By morning, the blizzard had eased, leaving behind a frozen silence. The team prepared their snow crawler, a reinforced vehicle capable of withstanding the -50 temperatures. As they loaded supplies, Mark looked uneasy. "Elias, if this turns out to be another abandoned station from the Cold War, it's not worth the risk." Elias zipped his parka, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Then we'll confirm it and head back. But if it's transmitting, someone, or something, turned it on." The crawler's engine roared to life, and soon the outpost disappeared behind them, swallowed by white. Hours passed in a monotony of ice and wind. Then Naomi's voice broke the silence. "We're at the coordinates." Elias stepped out first. The cold bit into his skin immediately, like needles under his flesh. Before him stretched an endless sheet of ice, but in the center the surface was uneven, slightly sunken, almost circular. Mark began scanning with a ground-penetrating radar. The screen flickered, then painted an outline below the surface. Straight lines, geometric patterns. A structure. "Jesus," Mark whispered. "There's a facility down there. Big one. At least 4 levels deep." Naomi joined him, staring at the display. "But there's no record of any installation here. Not from the US, not from the Soviets, no one." "Then who built it?" Elias asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, the signal returned, louder this time. It was emanating from directly below their feet. By nightfall, they'd begun drilling. The ice was thick, ancient, untouched by sunlight for thousands of years. When the drill finally hit metal, a low clang echoed up the shaft. Naomi's heart pounded as she peered down through the opening. "There's something reflective," she said. "It's like a hatch." They used heat torches to melt a path wide enough to descend. Steam hissed and swirled around them, mixing with the freezing air. Then, beneath layers of frost, words began to appear on the metal surface, stenciled in faded black. "Project Nereus. Property of U.S. Research Division, 1958. Restricted access." 1958? Mark said in disbelief. "That's over 60 years ago. This can't still be intact." Elias ran his gloved hand over the hatch. The metal was freezing but smooth, unnaturally preserved. "It's not corroded. Not even a dent. Whatever alloy this is, it's not standard military grade." They found an old control panel nearby, half encased in ice. Naomi brushed it clean, tracing a faded keypad. "There's still power," she whispered. The panel glowed faintly, a dim red light flickering under the frost. "Impossible," Elias muttered. "There's no external power source here." Naomi's hands trembled as she typed random sequences. On the 4th try, the light turned green, and a low hum vibrated through the ground. The hatch shuddered. Metal groaned, ice cracked. Slowly it began to open, releasing a deep hiss from below. A gust of warm, stale air rose from the darkness. Elias felt it brush his face, thick and humid, like the breath of something that had been waiting too long. "Everyone suit up," he ordered. "We're going down." The descent was slow. A ladder extended into blackness, illuminated only by their helmet lamps. The air grew warmer, heavier, and the walls glistened, not with ice but with condensation. It was as if they'd stepped into a living organism, breathing softly around them. At the bottom they found a corridor, metallic, sterile, but ancient. Layers of frost clung to the ceiling like veins. The walls were lined with panels and sealed doors, each marked with strange symbols and room numbers. "This looks military," Mark whispered. "But the design, it's not like anything from the 50s. Naomi swept her light across a glass window. Inside was a laboratory perfectly preserved. Equipment, notebooks, computers, all decades old yet untouched by decay. A layer of dust floated in the air like fog. Then she noticed something. On the far wall, a tank. About 3 meters tall, filled with a murky fluid. Shapes moved within it. Slow, deliberate movements. "Elias," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Something's in there." He stepped closer, peering through the glass. For a moment it looked like a trick of the light, a shadow twisting inside the tank. Then it pressed against the glass. A pale human-like hand. They all froze. The shape drifted back into the darkness of the fluid, vanishing. Could it be preserved tissue? Mark asked, his voice barely steady. Naomi shook her head. It moved on its own. Elias stared at the flickering lights. The hum of the facility had grown louder, like a heartbeat pulsing through the walls. "Whatever this place was," he said softly, "it's not abandoned." As they moved deeper, the power seemed to strengthen. Lights flickered to life overhead, one by one, stretching down the hallway. Somewhere in the distance, machinery stirred, old fans, conveyor belts, a low mechanical rhythm. They reached a central chamber, a wide, circular room lined with screens that began to blink awake as they entered. Lines of code streamed across in rapid succession. Naomi leaned over a console, her eyes wide. "The system's online. It's running diagnostics. It's recognizing us." "What do you mean recognizing?" Mark demanded. "Facial identification," she said. "It's tagging us by name." Elias felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible." But the screens didn't stop. They filled with text, each word appearing slowly, deliberately, as if being typed by an unseen hand. "Welcome back, Dr. Ward." Elias froze. "How does it?" Before he could finish, every light in the room flickered out. The hum deepened into a low, resonant drone. Then, from somewhere in the dark, a voice echoed softly through the intercom, distorted, genderless, and calm. "Protocol restart initiated. Containment breach in progress." Naomi's flashlight shook in her hand. "Elias, what containment?" He didn't answer, because deep within the facility something began to move, and the ice above them groaned like it was alive. The alarms echoed through the metal corridors like screams trapped in steel. Red lights began flashing overhead, each pulse slicing through the darkness. The message repeated over the speakers in that same calm, artificial voice. "Protocol restart initiated. Containment breach in progress." Elias Ward's breath fogged his visor as he scanned the shadows around him. "Naomi, shut it down," he shouted. I'm trying," she stammered, her fingers flying across the console. Lines of code blurred together, system locks, encrypted firewalls, all decades ahead of their time. "It's overriding every manual input. Whatever's controlling this, it's not just automated." Mark backed toward the door, his flashlight trembling in his hand. "What the hell does containment breach mean?" Before anyone could answer, a tremor rippled through the floor. The sound was low at first, like distant thunder, then the entire structure shook violently. The tank they'd seen earlier, the one with the pale hand, hissed as cracks spiderwebbed across its glass surface. Naomi screamed. The fluid inside began to bubble, thick clouds of steam rolling upward. Something moved within, twisting violently, slamming against the glass with inhuman force. "Everyone out," Elias ordered. "Now." They sprinted down the corridor, boots echoing against the metal. The sound of shattering glass roared behind them. Something wet hit the floor, a heavy dragging sound that followed them into the dark. The hallway ahead flickered to life with emergency lights. A sign above one door glowed faintly through the dust. "Biocontainment. Level 03. Authorized personnel only." Elias grabbed Naomi's arm. "Lock it behind us." They slammed the door shut, sealing it with a manual latch. The thudding stopped for a moment, then resumed, slower this time, like something pacing outside, waiting. They took refuge in what looked like an observation room. Dust floated in the red emergency light. Papers were scattered everywhere. Logbooks, handwritten notes, faded Polaroids of people in white lab coats. Naomi grabbed one and wiped off the grime. The date read 1960. "These people were here 60 years ago," she whispered. "But these logs, they're written in 2013. Elias frowned, flipping through another binder. The handwriting shifted, neat scientific notes dissolving into frantic scrawls. One line repeated over and over. "We thought it was dormant. We were wrong. Lawrence." Mark stared through a cracked observation window into another room. Inside were rows of containment tanks, all empty, their glass shattered long ago. Tubes hung from the ceilings like veins. Something dark was smeared along the floor, leading toward a half-open door at the far end. "I think it's moving through the lower levels," he said quietly. Naomi tapped a monitor. The system flickered, showing a partial map of the facility, a sprawling maze of corridors, labs, and sealed chambers beneath the ice. One section pulsed red, "Containment breach, Sector 5. Elias pointed. "That's where we need to go. If the system's still online, maybe there's a way to shut it down from the central core." Naomi hesitated. "You want to go toward the thing that broke containment?" "We don't have a choice," Elias said grimly. "If the facility collapses under us, we'll never get out alive." The deeper they went, the warmer it became. Frost melted off the walls, replaced by slick condensation. The metal floors were wet under their boots. The smell was wrong, not decay exactly, but organic, like damp soil and blood mixed with machinery. Naomi held her light steady, its beam cutting through the mist. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Elias froze. From the end of the corridor came a faint clicking sound, slow, rhythmic, mechanical, yet alive. It grew louder as they approached. When they turned the corner, they saw a large observation chamber with shattered glass and rusted equipment. In the center of the room was a containment pod, half melted, half grown into the floor. Inside it, something was alive. A shape pulsed faintly, covered in translucent membranes. It wasn't fully human. Its limbs were too long, its spine too curved. But the worst part was its face, pale and eyeless, yet its mouth twitched as if trying to form words. Naomi covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Elias stepped closer, his flashlight shaking. "This isn't a person. It's an experiment." Mark was already digging through the nearby control panel, his voice trembling. "There's data here. Project Nereus wasn't about weaponry. It was biological. They were splicing genes. Marine DNA. Human embryos." Naomi's eyes widened. They tried to create something that could survive down here. Elias read the notes etched into a nearby metal tag. Subject 12. Cognitive response achieved. Submersion adaptation successful. Phase 3 awaiting reawakening protocol. He looked up sharply. Reawakening protocol. That's what the system meant when it said restart. The creature's chest rose slowly, once, then again. It was breathing. They backed away, hearts pounding. Then the sound came again, the metallic clicking, but now it was behind them. Mark turned his flashlight just in time to see a shape dart across the hallway, impossibly fast. His breath caught. "It's not alone," he whispered. Naomi grabbed Elias's arm. "We have to go, now." They ran, the corridor lights flickering violently. Behind them, something crawled across the walls and ceiling, fast, silent, moving like liquid shadow. When Naomi turned to look, she saw glimpses of pale limbs, glistening skin, and the faint reflection of teeth. They burst into an elevator shaft at the far end of the corridor. The panel still glowed green. Naomi slammed the button. The doors closed just as something slammed against them from outside, hard enough to dent the metal. The elevator began to descend. For a moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing. Then, through the crack in the door, Naomi saw a pale hand slide down the metal, long, thin fingers leaving streaks of blood. Elias clenched his jaw. "We're going to the core," he said. "Whatever's keeping this place alive, we end it." The elevator stopped with a jolt. The doors opened into a cavernous room, easily the largest they'd seen. It was circular, filled with rows of glowing cylinders and cables that ran like arteries into the walls. In the center stood a single, enormous structure, a containment sphere suspended by mechanical arms. Its surface shimmered faintly like liquid metal. Naomi stepped forward slowly. This must be the power source. It's alive. Elias's flashlight caught something engraved into the console nearby. A single phrase. Energy through cognition. The mind as the generator. Before they could react, the sphere pulsed. The air vibrated low and deep, and the monitors around the room flickered to life. Images flashed. Scientists working, test subjects screaming, experiments dissolving into chaos. Then a face appeared on every screen, grainy, flickering, almost human. Its eyes were black voids. It spoke, voice layered with static. "We waited for you." Naomi staggered back. "Elias, it knows us." The lights dimmed. The temperature dropped instantly. From above, condensation began to fall like cold rain. Then the voice came again, calm and measured, almost kind. "You brought light to the dark. Now we wake." The containment sphere split open like a shell, and a torrent of thick black fluid spilled out, hitting the floor with a hiss. Something inside began to crawl free. And every screen in the room displayed the same message. Project Nereus, reactivation complete. The sound that followed was unlike anything they'd ever heard, a wet, dragging ripple, as if the air itself were tearing apart. The black liquid oozed across the metal floor, moving with purpose, gathering itself into a pulsing mass. The stench that filled the room was nauseating, like burnt oil and rotting meat. Naomi stumbled backward, her flashlight shaking. It's moving on its own." Elias raised his weapon, a flare gun, the only thing resembling defense they had. "Stay behind me." Mark stared in disbelief as the fluid began to climb the walls, leaving behind trails of steaming residue. It reached the ceiling, then fell again, reforming into a shape, tall, thin, human-like, but with features shifting constantly, like faces trapped just beneath the surface of black tar. The thing stood motionless for a moment. Then it spoke. Its voice was dozens of voices, men, women, even children, overlapping into a ghastly symphony. "You woke us from the dark." Naomi covered her ears. "What are you?" The creature tilted its head. The faint outline of a mouth appeared, stretching unnaturally wide. "We were the experiment. Now, we are the result." Elias fired the flare. The red light exploded against the creature, setting the room aglow. It shrieked, not in pain but in fury, the sound echoing through every speaker in the lab. The air temperature plummeted as lights flickered violently. "Move!" Elias yelled. They ran toward the far exit, slipping on the slick metal floor. Behind them, the black mass slammed into the walls, spreading across the panels like a living infection. They burst into another corridor, the alarms blaring once more. The lights overhead were dying, each one flickering out as if being swallowed by darkness itself. Naomi pulled up the map on her wrist console. "There's another lift at the far end. It leads to the communications bay." Elias nodded, leading the way. "If we can reach it, maybe we can send a signal out before this whole place becomes." A sharp clang interrupted him. Mark screamed as something shot out of a vent, a black tendril, wrapping around his leg and dragging him off his feet. He kicked and screamed, clawing at the metal floor. "Mark!" Naomi shouted. She grabbed his arm, but the tendril yanked harder. Elias fired another flare. The light hit the tendril, searing through it, releasing Mark. The burning fluid splattered onto the wall, hissing violently as it melted through steel. Mark gasped for breath, trembling. "It's inside the vents. It's everywhere." They kept running, following the dim emergency lights deeper into the corridor. The structure groaned under their weight, ice cracking somewhere above. Naomi glanced up and saw what looked like frost creeping in reverse, forming black instead of white. The infection was spreading. They reached the communications bay, a large chamber filled with outdated monitors and a massive satellite uplink terminal. The windows were frosted, the glass thick enough to show the ice wall pressing against it from outside. Naomi rushed to the control panel. "Power rerouting, okay, signal strength minimal but maybe enough." Elias looked around nervously. The room was too quiet. The hum of machinery beneath their feet had changed, slower, deeper. Mark stood by the window, staring into the frozen darkness. "There's something moving out there," he whispered. Naomi didn't look up. "Focus, Mark. Just." "I'm serious," he interrupted. His breath fogged the glass. "Something big. It's under the ice." Elias joined him, peering out into the frozen abyss. For a moment, There was only silence, and then a faint, shifting shadow far below, moving slowly, serpent-like, through the translucent ice. It was enormous, its form indistinct but alive. Elias felt his throat tighten. Whatever they created here, it didn't all stay inside. Before they could react, the power flickered. Naomi's console sparked violently, the screen going black. No, no, no. It's overriding the system again. The lights dimmed, then turned red. A familiar voice filled the room, calm, measured, mechanical. Protocol 9 reactivation complete. The specimen has achieved full network integration. Elias looked at Naomi. What does that mean? Her eyes widened. It's not just physical, it's connected to the base itself. The power grid, the systems, they're part of it. Suddenly, the floor beneath them rippled. The metal groaned, then split open as black fluid burst upward like a geyser. They leapt back as it began spreading across the room, climbing the walls, consuming the equipment. Naomi screamed, grabbing a flare from Elias's belt and firing it at the main console. The explosion of light seared the room in red, the heat momentarily forcing the black mass back. Run! Elias shouted again. They sprinted out, slamming the blast door shut behind them. The metal hissed and warped almost immediately under the pressure from the other side. They found a narrow maintenance tunnel, its walls lined with pipes and flickering bulbs. The air smelled of rust and ozone. Every step echoed through the claustrophobic passage, and every sound felt too close. Naomi panted, clutching the flare gun. We can't keep running. It's merging with everything. If it connects to the reactor, it'll have a power source strong enough to survive anything. Elias stopped, his face grim. Then we take it out. We overload the core. Mark stared at him. That'll destroy the whole facility. We won't make it out. Elias turned to him, eyes cold. If that thing gets to the surface, it won't matter who makes it out. The tunnel shuddered. A noise echoed from behind, a wet, skittering sound like claws on metal. They moved faster. As they reached the end of the passage, they emerged into a massive open chamber, the reactor room. It was cathedral-like in size, filled with tall pipes, glowing conduits, and a pulsing energy core at the center. Steam hissed from vents, casting ghostly patterns across the walls. Naomi's voice trembled. This is it, the heart of the facility. Mark pointed to the control bridge across the chamber. Manual overload switches there. They started toward it, but then the temperature dropped again. Their breath turned white. The lights dimmed. And then the creature's voice came, no longer through speakers, but inside their heads. You are part of us now. You saw what we became. You cannot unsee it. Naomi clutched her temples, crying out. The sound wasn't just a voice, it was a memory forcing itself into their minds. They saw flashes, scientists cheering as the experiment breathed for the first time, then screaming as it devoured them. A woman pleading for mercy as her face dissolved into the black fluid. Elias shouted, "Don't listen. Move." The floor trembled. From every vent, every crack, the black liquid poured forth, coalescing into a towering shape behind them. Its face was now clearer, a grotesque fusion of the scientists who once worked here. Dozens of eyes blinked within its shifting form. It reached for them. Naomi reached the control bridge, slamming her hand onto the terminal. Manual override. Code Delta 7. The system responded with a warning tone. Reactor overload will occur in 5 minutes. The room began to shake violently. Steam vented from every pipe, lights flashing red. Elias grabbed Naomi's arm. We need to get to the escape shaft. But as they turned, Mark screamed. The creature had caught him, tendrils piercing through his suit, lifting him into the air. His eyes went wide, his mouth open in a silent scream as the blackness began to pour into him. Naomi reached out, sobbing. Mark? He looked at her one last time before his face dissolved, merging into the thing that consumed him. Elias pulled her away, shouting, He's gone. Move. They ran toward the maintenance ladder as the entire chamber began to collapse. The sound of rushing fluid filled the air, the creature spreading, absorbing everything it touched. As they climbed, the voice returned, soft and almost sorrowful. You could have stayed. You could have become more. Elias shouted into the darkness, We're ending this. They reached the upper access hatch just as the countdown began. The entire facility roared beneath them, a monstrous, living engine of death. Naomi turned back one last time, tears streaking down her face. The core glowed brighter and brighter until everything below was pure white. Then, detonation. A blinding flash. A thunderous roar. The shockwave tore through the tunnels, swallowing everything in its path. The explosion had turned night into day. For a moment, the Antarctic sky glowed red, the ice reflecting the inferno that erupted from deep beneath the surface. Then came silence. A silence so heavy it felt as if the world itself had stopped breathing. When Naomi finally opened her eyes, all she saw was white. White snow. White light. White nothing. The shockwave had thrown her clear of the facility, burying her in a mountain of ice and snow. Every breath she took burned her lungs. Every movement sent knives of pain through her ribs. "Elias," she whispered weakly. "Elias, are you?" A gloved hand burst from the snow beside her. She scrambled toward it, digging frantically until Elias's face emerged, pale, bloodied, but alive. He coughed violently, the sound raw against the dead air. "We made it." Naomi pulled him upright. The ground around them was cracked and steaming, massive fissures splitting the ice like veins. Far below, in the abyss, something faintly glowed, not fire, but an otherworldly blue shimmer that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her stomach twisted. "That's the reactor chamber." Elias stared at the glow, his voice hoarse. "The core should have vaporized everything. There's no way anything could have survived that." But even as he said it, the faint hum reached their ears again. Oh, rhythmic, familiar. The same pulse they'd heard when they first entered the facility, the same hum the creature made before it spoke. Naomi's hands began to tremble. "Elias, it's still alive." They stumbled across the ice field, following the old coordinates of their drop point. The storm had thinned, leaving behind a chilling stillness that made every sound echo for miles. Their radio crackled with static, occasionally flickering with ghostly fragments of voices, but none they recognized. Team 4, negative contact, base integrity. Elias tried to respond, but the transmitter kept cutting out. The magnetic interference was worsening, the compass spinning erratically. "It's like the explosion woke something under us," he muttered. Naomi glanced behind them. The crater where the facility once stood was now a spiraling pit of black ice, still steaming faintly. She could swear the cracks were spreading, as if something beneath the glacier was shifting. Watching. After an hour of silent trudging, they spotted a flicker of movement on the horizon. A small metal structure poking through the ice. It looked like an outpost, old and half-buried, its antenna bent but intact. Naomi exhaled shakily. "Shelter." Elias didn't respond. His gaze was fixed ahead, unblinking. "That's not on the map." The outpost door creaked as Naomi forced it open. A rush of stale, metallic air hit her face, the unmistakable smell of isolation. Inside, the walls were lined with frost and the remnants of old equipment. A single generator sat in the corner, dead but mostly intact. Elias dropped his pack and began to dig through the drawers. "Looks like it's been here for decades." Naomi's flashlight beam swept across a dusty plaque on the wall. Polar Station 9, established 1958, Division of Biomedical Research. Her stomach dropped. "Elias, this isn't an outpost. It's one of the old observation stations. The ones the report said were abandoned before the main facility was built." He froze. "You mean, this is their first lab?" Before she could answer, the generator sputtered to life with a weak hum. The old lights flickered, illuminating the interior in a sickly yellow glow. And that's when they saw it, on the far wall behind a curtain of ice, a message carved directly into the metal. "Don't trust the light." Naomi's flashlight wavered. "What does that mean?" Elias looked around. "Probably nothing good." The radio console on the desk suddenly hissed to life, emitting a faint static hum. Then through the distortion a voice emerged. "This is Dr. Klein. If anyone receives this, we didn't make it out. The entity learned to mimic light. It's inside the systems. If you see the glow, run. Don't look at it." The message cut off. Naomi turned to Elias, her face pale. "It's still transmitting, after all these years." He leaned closer to the radio, adjusting the dial. "Maybe there's more." A sudden pop echoed through the room. The overhead bulb burst, plunging them into darkness. Then, from the far end of the station, a faint blue light began to flicker. It pulsed slowly at first, then faster in rhythm with the same hum from the crater. Naomi whispered, "Elias, that's the same light." The hum deepened. The air around them grew warmer. Frost began melting from the walls. And then, faintly, shapes began to appear in the light. Outlines of faces, hands pressed against the ice as if reaching from the other side. Elias grabbed Naomi's arm. "We need to get out of here." They sprinted toward the door, but as Naomi reached for the handle, a shadow passed across the entrance, and the door slammed shut with a deafening clang. The blue light brightened behind them. Elias turned, raising the flare gun, his hands shaking. The light shifted, coalescing into a vaguely human silhouette, but twisted, flickering as if made of smoke and static. Within its form, Naomi could see the faint image of Mark's face, smiling. Her heart nearly stopped. "No, it can't be." The figure took a step forward. The air shimmered with static. The sound of Mark's voice came out distorted and layered. "You didn't save me, Naomi. You left me." She backed away, tears filling her eyes. "You're not him. We could have been together. You could still join me." Elias fired the flare. The creature exploded into fragments of blue light that scattered across the room like fireflies. But instead of fading, the fragments sank into the walls, the ice beginning to bleed blue from within. Naomi screamed. "It's using the ice." The entire structure groaned. Cracks formed in the ceiling, glowing with that same eerie hue. Elias grabbed Naomi by the arm and pulled her toward the emergency hatch in the back wall. They crawled through as the outpost began to collapse. Once outside, they didn't stop running. The snow around them wasn't white anymore. Faint tendrils of blue pulsed beneath the surface, spreading outward like veins. Naomi looked back one last time. The outpost sank slowly into the ice, the blue glow consuming it completely until nothing remained but a faint shimmer beneath the snow. Elias panted heavily. "It's spreading across the glacier, feeding on the energy we released when the reactor blew." Naomi fell to her knees. "We didn't destroy it, Elias. We gave it power." The ground rumbled beneath them again, deep, seismic, as if something enormous was moving far below. In the distance, the horizon shimmered with faint blue light. And then, for the first time since the explosion, a signal crackled through their comms, clear and strong. "This is Research Vessel Endeavour. We've picked up abnormal readings from your location. Unidentified energy signatures beneath the ice. Do you require extraction?" Naomi grabbed the radio. "Yes. Please, we need immediate evacuation. We have survivors." But before she could finish, a new voice cut in, faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Endeavour isn't coming." Naomi froze. Who is this?" The voice on the other end chuckled softly, almost kindly. "You brought it up, Naomi. Now it's awake, and it's hungry." The transmission cut to static. Naomi slowly turned toward Elias, horror dawning across her face. Far in the distance, beneath the ice, the faint glow began to move rapidly toward them. Elias whispered, "Run." They did. But even as they ran, the ground behind them cracked open, the blue light bursting forth like veins of living fire, racing across the ice toward the horizon. Whatever they had unleashed was no longer bound by walls or containment. It was free. The wind tore across the frozen plain, carrying with it the distant sound of cracking ice, deep, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something massive beneath their feet. Naomi and Elias ran until their legs could no longer carry them, collapsing behind a jagged ridge of ice. Their breath came out in white bursts that vanished into the endless dark. The blue light was still moving across the glacier behind them, pulsing, spreading faster than they could flee. It wasn't just light anymore. It was alive, crawling beneath the surface like veins under translucent skin. Naomi gripped the radio with numb fingers. "This is Dr. Naomi Grant. We're at coordinates 78.3 south, 145.6 east. We need immediate evacuation. The lab has been destroyed but..." Static. Then a faint, distorted voice broke through. "Copy. Dr. Grant. This is Endeavour. Your signal is weak but readable. Extraction in 5 minutes. Hold your position." Naomi exhaled shakily. They heard us. Elias, leaning against the ice, stared into the distance. 5 minutes might be too long. The glow beneath the glacier pulsed again, brighter this time, spreading outward in a perfect circle. And then the ground began to move. At first it was just a tremor, then with a sound like thunder, a section of the ice plain collapsed. The shockwave knocked both of them off balance. From the fissure that split open, a massive shape began to rise, slow, deliberate, ancient. Naomi's mind refused to process what she was seeing. The thing emerging from the pit was not just one entity, it was thousands of fused shapes, melted together into a single monstrous form. Human limbs, machinery, bone, metal, all intertwined, pulsing with that same blue light. It was the lab, and the people inside it, reborn. Elias whispered, "It absorbed everything." The creature opened what could barely be called a mouth, a split in the mass that glowed with blinding blue light. The sound that came out wasn't a roar, but a low, resonant hum that made their bones vibrate. The air shimmered. The ice cracked beneath them. Naomi's eyes widened as she realized the truth. It's not trying to kill us, it's trying to reshape us. Elias grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. "Then we make sure it doesn't get the chance." By the time they saw the Endeavor, it was descending from the clouds. A black research helicopter, blades cutting through the snowstorm. Its searchlight scanned the plane, landing on them. Naomi waved frantically. "Over here. Please, over here." The helicopter began its descent. But as it neared the ground, the blue glow beneath the ice pulsed violently again. The snow around them lifted in a swirling vortex, static electricity crackling through the air. "Elias!" Naomi screamed. The helicopter's lights began flickering erratically. Then, suddenly, the entire craft jerked sideways as something massive struck from below. The ground erupted. A black tendril, thick as a tree trunk, burst from the ice, wrapping around the helicopter's tail. The rotors screamed as the pilot fought to stabilize it. Naomi could see their faces through the glass, their mouths open in panic. "Cut the line! Cut the line!" she screamed into the radio. But it was too late. The tendril pulled. The helicopter spiraled violently, slamming into the ground 100 meters away. The explosion lit the sky in a fiery orange against the endless white. Naomi fell to her knees, staring at the burning wreck. The wind carried the smell of fuel and melting ice. The tendril slithered back beneath the glacier, dragging the wreckage with it. Elias placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "We have to keep moving. There might be another way." Naomi's voice cracked. "That was our only way out." He looked toward the horizon, where faint lights blinked in the distance. "There's still the old research convoy site. If we can reach their emergency beacon." A sound cut him off. A human voice, faint, echoing across the ice. "Naomi." She froze. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Naomi, please. Help me." It was Mark. Elias's face went pale. "It's not him. Don't listen." But the voice was so familiar, so desperate, that Naomi's heart wavered. "He sounds alive. You left me behind, Naomi. But I can feel everything now. It's beautiful down here. Come see." The light beneath them shifted, forming a path of glowing blue, leading toward the massive fissure. Naomi shook her head violently, clutching her temples. No, it's in my head again." Elias grabbed her hand. "Don't look at it. Focus on me." But the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder, layered, dozens of voices now. The dead scientists, the ones from the recordings, even Dr. Klein, all murmuring, coaxing, promising peace in the cold. "You could be free, Naomi. The pain ends when you let go." Naomi screamed, firing the last flare directly into the fissure. The red light cut through the blue, illuminating something deep within, a vast network of veins pulsing with life. And far below, she saw it, a core of pure blackness like an eye staring back at her. The hum intensified. The air warped. The creature moved. They ran again, following the fading beacon of the old convoy site. Their bodies were numb, their minds slipping between exhaustion and terror. Behind them, the blue glow consumed the horizon, chasing them like a living wave. The convoy station came into view, half-buried trucks, collapsed tents, and a rusted comms tower jutting from the snow. Elias sprinted toward the tower, climbing through the broken ladder as Naomi tried to boot up the old transmitter inside one of the vehicles. Come on, she muttered, fingers trembling. The console flickered weakly to life. System rebooting, signal pending. Elias's voice came through from the tower. "We need to broadcast now." But before she could respond, the snow around the convoy began to shift. The glow returned, this time beneath the trucks themselves. Metal groaned as something enormous pressed upward. Naomi screamed, It's under us. The ground burst open. A torrent of black and blue fluid surged upward, swallowing the vehicle's whole. Elias leapt from the tower just as it collapsed, landing hard beside Naomi. He grabbed the radio from her hand, shouting into it, "This is Dr. Elias Kane and Dr. Naomi Grant. Anyone receiving this, you must quarantine this region immediately. It's not a virus, it's alive." Static. Then a faint response. "Copy that, Dr. Kane. We have visual from orbital scans. We're seeing movement under the entire ice sheet." Naomi froze. "Under the entire sheet?" "Yes. It's spreading fast. God help us." The transmission cut out. The creature's hum grew louder again, not from one direction but from everywhere. The ice cracked open in concentric rings, light spilling upward in blinding waves. Naomi clutched Elias's arm, tears streaming down her face. "We can't stop it, Elias. It's already won." He turned to her, his expression hard. "Then we don't stop it. We bury it." He pointed to the beacon, its power core still active. "If we overload it, it might cause a chain reaction through the ice field. A cave-in. It could seal it again." Naomi hesitated, then nodded. Together they tore the core from its housing, rewiring the circuits with trembling hands. The beacon began to glow brighter, warning alarms blaring. The light from beneath the glacier surged toward them, towering now like a tidal wave of blue fire. Within it, faces formed, reaching out, screaming in both agony and ecstasy. Naomi took Elias's hand. "If this doesn't work." He squeezed it. "Then at least it ends here." The beacon exploded. A massive shockwave erupted, collapsing the ice field in all directions. The ground beneath them split apart, swallowing everything, the light, the lab remains, and finally them. For a moment, the entire Antarctic plateau shone with blinding brilliance, then went dark. 6 weeks later, a satellite feed flickered on in a government monitoring station. A young technician leaned closer, adjusting the thermal scanner. "Sir, you need to see this," he said. His supervisor walked over. On the screen, a faint blue pulse appeared deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The supervisor frowned. "That's not possible." The site was sealed. The technician swallowed hard. "Then what's this?" The pulse quickened. For a moment, the entire image glitched, and a voice came through the speakers. "You can't bury evolution." The screen went black. The end.